Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Beekeeping for Newbies. Thank you so very much for taking the time to listen. As always, I appreciate you, my favorite listener. Thank you for tuning in and listening to every episode loyally and faithfully and all those good things. Well, today we are talking about episode 140. This is packages and nukes and what to expect those first 30 days. Now, this came up from a question. I think somebody mentioned it in the Discord room, like, hey, has there been an episode where we can kind of get a rough idea of what we should expect those first 30 days. And I thought, well, I think we've probably covered it in one capacity or another, but I'm really trying to bridge that gap between the people who just start at whatever episode was the most recent one and are moving forward, and then those who have started from episode 1 and went all the way through, which is probably the optimal way of doing it. I'd say, if nothing else, you probably want to hit like those first 30 or so, and you'll get a good foundation from there. But I wanted to go ahead and do this because I know we do have a lot of new folks in the Discord room. I think we're adding a couple new people every day, and we're probably seeing 4 or 5 new subscribers every day on YouTube. So we certainly appreciate you all stopping in and checking out videos there. But as always, feel free to drop me an email if you have any questions or if there's something I can do to help you out. We'll do a couple of quick admin notes here as we're kicking off, and then we'll jump into the meat of the discussion today. All of the podcasts are simulcasted, or whatever you want to call it. They're uploaded at the same time as I put them on my podcasting host. They go to YouTube right away. So if you prefer to watch on YouTube, if you'd rather watch over, I'm sorry, I should say listen, really. There's no video with it. But if you want to check it out over on YouTube, helps my watch hours. So whatever works best for you. I just wanted to let you know that it is available on your favorite streaming platform, podcast platform, or you can check it out on YouTube, whatever works best for you. On the Beekeeping for Newbies homepage, there is a link to the Discord server. So like I mentioned before, there's a lot of communication that's going on in there. This is probably my favorite time of year for this because it just gets really busy. A lot of people chatting and talking and asking questions. And we've developed a good core group of people who've got a few years under their belt, and they're doing a great job at helping answer questions. So it's a good place to collaborate and joke around and have some fun. So feel free to join us over there. On a more personal note here, I did just wrap up a 91-hour fast. So I literally had nothing but coffee and water for 4.5 days or 4 days and something or other. So that was kind of cool. I'm not like a fasting expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it has some real value, and I'm hoping to capitalize on some of that. So we'll see how that works out. And lastly, the SwarmStream 2025 camera is now set up. It's validated. It's working. Everything is good. If you'd like to have it live during the day, drop me an email, let me know in the Discord room or whatever. It's it's not anything exciting. It's a camera on a swarm trap. And my plan originally was, well, I'm just going to put the camera up, and then as soon as I'm wandering around the yard and I see a swarm show up, I'll live stream it and we'll let it go. But, you can see during the day, bees just drop by and check it out. It's kind of fun. So it doesn't matter to me. I can click about 4 or 5 buttons and we can just have it go every day, for 8 hours a day or whatever. Jump in, check it out. If you see bees, cool. If you don't, then just look at the mess in my yard. Okay, so diving in here to what you should be expecting as a new beekeeper installing a package of bees or a nuke. So we're going to break this up into of course, this kind of like overview section, about what is a package and what is a nuke, just for anybody who's not familiar. And then we're going to talk about what is unique between the two, between packages and nukes. And then we'll kind of, wrap up as we talk about things that would apply to both of them. So whether your bees are already, installed, you've got them up and they're ready to go, or, they're coming in the next couple of weeks, this should give you a good foundation to help keep you calm, relaxed, organized, and kind of try to get you set up for success in those first few weeks. So what is a package of bees? So you're going to get a screened wooden or plastic container, and they usually advertise them as being 3 pounds of bees. It'll have a mated queen in a queen cage on the inside. There should be a can or some other form of container that's going to have a little bit of some sugar syrup in it. That just gives them something to nourish them, during the trip from where they were packaged to your house. So that's it. You're just getting a box. There's no hive bodies. There's no place to put them. There's no frames, no comb. They've got nothing. Just bees and a queen in a package. Now, what is a nuke? So a nuke is short for a nucleus colony, or sort of a miniature colony. Now, a standard nuke is usually 5 frames. You usually have 2 frames of honey. Sometimes it can be like an open nectar, but usually you have at least 1 frame of honey, maybe some open nectar and honey on frame number 2. The 3rd frame would be potentially brood or a brood pollen mix. It just depends on how they broke it all up. But those other 3 frames I would expect to be mostly brood frames. This should be brood that is about to emerge, and then also a bunch of bees on that brood. That's what you should be getting. So this is basically just a miniature hive ready to go. So talking about packages. Now, package, again, this is a blank slate, so you've got nothing. Now, the queen has been with them. That queen that is now a part of that colony, she was not with them prior to that package being created. So she is still a new queen. She's been caged, so she's not laying. So her queen pheromone is not quite as strong as it is when she's actively laying. So you do want to pay attention and be careful during the queen introduction phase, just to make sure that they're still cool with her. It shouldn't be an issue. I'm going to say it's in the high 90% of the time. There's no problem. Every now and then they get squirrely, but leave her in the cage. And we've talked about before about different cage opening techniques and things, but put the cage somewhere on the inside where they can set her free on the candy end of the queen cage, and then she'll go out and start doing her thing. Now, one disadvantage you should know about when you're getting packages is you're not going to get a single new bee for 3 weeks. So it's a 21-day brood cycle, and you have no comb drawn to actually start using. So when you install this package of bees, they've got to start drawing comb as step 1. And then, of course, in that comb, everything that they have and use is going to go in that comb. So if they're laying eggs, if they're bringing in pollen, nectar, whatever they bring in, it goes into that comb. And right now, it's a kind of a juggling act here, because you want to have enough comb to make more bees. They got to ramp up the colony. They got to get everybody up to full strength. But yet you still got to have a place to put things. So they're going to draw comb really, really quickly. I definitely recommend, if you can do it, all wax foundation if possible. The bees just generally seem to accept that better. There's pros and cons, and we're not going to argue and debate it here today, but I just think they are a lot better for a brand new packaged bees. Giving them wax foundation, they draw that up and they can do it really, really fast. Now, another thing I really recommend for packaged bees is feeding them sugar syrup. Now, people are going to keep debating, probably as long as we're keeping honeybees, as to what the concentration is, of water to sugar. And I used to always follow the rules. 1-to-1 is what you want to stimulate them to draw comb. That is, like a concentration that would be similar to probably what they would see in what they would see in nectar in the environment from a flower. They see that coming in. They're like, oh, better draw comb. We got to have a place to put it. Michael Palmer years ago was like, I never do 1-to-1. I always do 2-to-1, because why make them do twice the effort to draw in the same concentration of sugar? They can just get it at one time. So that can be a bit confusing and challenging, because you really do want them to draw up a lot more space. You want them to spread that out, but it's a balancing act of what works for you. Like I said, I did the 1-to-1, it worked fine. I've done 2-to-1, seems to be working fine. So I've just standardized on 2-to-1. I do it for everything. If you're not really sure, go 1.5-to-1. Like, it's not a scientific thing, right? You want to get, I would say, don't go less than a 1-to-1, but 1-to-1, 1.5-to-1, 2-to-1. Figure out what solution you want to do. When in doubt, do 1-to-1 and just stimulate brood production, stimulate the drawing of comb, and that'll work fine. Now, like I said, it's going to be an interesting process, because you'll go in from day one, you have all your frames, you throw your bees in, you come back in your first inspection, and you see like this little section of 8 inches by 6 inches of drawn comb, and you're like, oh, well, that's kind of cool, I guess. And then, you look in there, you should see pretty quickly, you see some eggs in there. And then you'll come back in on your week 2 inspection, and they'll have 2 or 3 frames drawn up, and they'll be just cranking. They will go, go, go. Now, one of the reasons I say feeding is really important is they have nothing. They literally have nothing. So if you install them and you get a couple of days of some storms or cold weather, they're hanging out inside, burning resources in their body with nothing to replace that. But if you have sugar syrup in there in a feeder, they will keep working nonstop around the clock. They'll just keep going. You want them working 24 hours a day. Now, I think I mentioned it earlier, but you get your queen installed in her package. If you installed, let's say, on a Saturday, I'd say by like Tuesday, Wednesday time frame, it's worth taking a look. Go ahead and open the top cover, your inner cover, and she should be somewhere near the middle of frames 5 and 6. You just pull out the queen cage, take a look, make sure she's been released, take the queen cage out, close it all back up, and then wait another 4 or 5 days till the next weekend and do your first inspection. But remember, it's going to be a bit of a slower start, and that's fine. If you get them early enough and you have long enough nectar flow, they'll build up and they'll be fine. But like I said, you do have to be feeding early on, and you may very well be feeding them a lot of the summer. It just depends on where you are and your nectar flow. One thing that I would highly recommend is don't even think about trying to take honey, and don't even think about splitting in the first season. There is a lot of really, really bad advice out there about people. There's always somebody who wants to find a way to contradict what somebody else says. Like, as I will say, hey, it's a really bad idea to take honey or split in the first season. Someone else will come by and be like, oh, it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And then they don't tell you, oh yeah, but you're going to need to spend $200 in feed to feed them for 4 months to get them to ramp up so that they can survive. So is it possible? Absolutely. You can install that package of bees. They can bring in, probably at least 1, maybe even 2, depending on the length of your flow, supers of honey. And you're like, hooray, I've got honey. And you are feeding them, 100% feeding them from now until September, October. So can it be done? Yes. Is it a best practice? Is it the best thing for the bees? Is it the best thing for you and your wallet? Probably not. So don't even worry about that. Just take it slow. Enjoy the process there. And another thing I want you to remember is in the spring, things are exciting. Man, you're seeing them coming in with those pollen sacs loaded down. There's a ton of activity. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is the coolest thing in the world. And it makes you just want to do stuff. You're like, oh, maybe I should do this and do this. Just relax. It will come to an end, and that's when a lot of the challenges really start kicking in. So take it slow, relax, enjoy the ride. Okay, so on Nucs. Nucs are, again, it's a miniature hive. They've got 5 frames of drawn comb. They have a laying queen. She's been in there working for a long time. When you get that nuc and you get it installed, they're not far away at all from, they should have 3 full frames of brood with, I don't know what the math is, 12, 14,000, 15,000, eggs per frame. You are going to have an entire colony's worth of bees emerging within the next, 7 to 10 days roughly. So you better be prepared. So what I want you to do is plan for that first inspection after, I'm going to probably say you could do 4 or 5 days, but give it a week. You get them installed. Again, let's just say you're putting them in a 10-frame Langstroth hive. They are 5 of the frames, and there are 5 remaining. Well, the general rule would tell you that once they fill up the next 2, that's probably about when you want to add a honey supers. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the term, not used to it, never heard it, a super is both a noun and a verb. So you can say, I have a honey super, which is a box used and dedicated for the collection of honey. That could be for you, it could be for the bees, but it's just a box that is for honey. And then you have the process of supering, being the verb, to say, I'm going to super that hive, meaning I'm going to put one of these hive bodies designed for honey onto the hive. So it's used both ways. You're going to probably need to either super the hive, or if you're doing like a double deep configuration or double and triple medium brood box configuration, you may need to add other brood boxes. It just depends on your setup. So let me give you some more details just in case that's not clear. If you're starting with a single deep brood box, you could just add a queen excluder and put nothing but honey supers above that. Or you can go ahead and add another deep on top of that, let them draw all of that out, and then start looking to what they want to put above that, maybe mediums or shallows or whatever. Alternatively, you can use all mediums for everything, and that's another way you can go. But you really want to pay attention. You've got to be aggressive with this, at least getting them from the nuc size out of that first deep box, because if you let them explode and you're not keeping an eye on them, that little nuc that you had, that you installed, that you're all excited about, they're going to be making swarm plans within 2 weeks. Like, you could go in there 2 weeks later and be like, holy crap, I have swarm cells. What do I do now? Very realistic possibility. Now, we'll talk again, we'll cover it some more later on about things you need to do about maybe shuffling or moving some frames around to help get them to draw things up. We've talked about it a lot in the past. We'll talk about it some more later on. I'm not going to dive into that now, but you're going to need to be moving some frames around and doing things to stimulate them to draw the comb in different areas and make sure they're seeing all that space as good, usable space. But really, really pay attention, between you as you're transitioning from that first to the second hive body. Now, one thing that you're going to want to be paying attention for, and this is across for both of them, whether it's a package, nuke, doesn't matter. I want you to be paying really close attention to the eggs, the egg laying, the brood pattern, the temperament, how quickly they're expanding. These are a lot of things you want to be watching for. But I've got a couple of ideas that I want to talk about, more of like a week by week, kind of a calendar almost type of thing that I'll come back to. So let me go in and just talk about some of the shared priorities, some things that are going to be consistent across the board. Like I talked about feeding, we're going to feed nukes, we're going to feed packages, probably not nukes. But you know what? If you need to, do it. If you see that maybe your nukes got there ahead of or behind a nectar flow, you might have to feed them. So if they came with 1, 2 honey frames and they're eating all of that honey, that means they're not getting it in the environment. So feed them if you have to. Like I said, normally you don't, but you might. I want you to start paying attention for bugs and things that could be a problem. This is just general. Of course, it's important in the first 30 days, but it's always important. But early in the spring, those little hive beetles, man, they're going to show up, depending on where you live. They're going to show up and they're going to start wreaking havoc. They're going to start laying eggs, and it's really quick for them to be problematic. And what I'm getting at is, let's say you have your feeder in there. Your feeders need to be checked regularly. If they're not consuming that sugar water, get it out. What'll happen is bees will always find a way to get into those feeders, and a couple of them will die, and then you'll end up with small hive beetle laying eggs on them or around that area. And then you end up with this fermentation, which, aside from the hive beetle, you can have that either way. You open up the hive and it smells like you're making wine or something like that. Like, you'll know the smell. The first time you see it, you're like, oh, okay, I know what he's talking about. You open up and that feeder's got old sugar syrup in it. Yeah, your sugar syrup is now wine. You got to get that stuff out of there. But pay attention for those hive beetles early on. Pay attention for any other things that shouldn't be in there. Look at how many dead bees are around. That's going to be an important indicator for a couple things. One, you want a good hygienic hive. If a bee dies, that body needs to get out. They need to go down there, pick it up, throw it out. If they're leaving a lot of crap in the hive, and I have had colonies before that are terribly, terribly unhygienic. Like, the entire bottom board is loaded with crap. And then what ends up happening is you get a little bit of a storm, or you do an inspection and spill a little bit of sugar syrup when you're filling up a feeder or whatever. Now you have this liquidy kind of soup at the bottom. And that's just another thing where the hive beetles, even without the liquidy sugar syrup or whatever, the hive beetle will find that area down there where it's just a mess, and they'll lay eggs in there. Anywhere that egg can kind of be semi-protected, they'll lay them anywhere. Now that whole bottom board funky area just becomes a breeding ground for hive beetle larvae. It's nasty. But pay attention to the hygiene of the bees and how well they're cleaning things out. If you see anything weird in a cell, look at it again the next day or whatever and see if they've yanked that out. When I say weird in the cell, I'm trying not to overwhelm you with a lot of terminology and things, but if they see something they don't like, they should reach into the cell, yank it out, and throw it out, probably before you even see it. But pay attention if you see something that looks out of place. Now, when I say that, and you're saying, well, Jeff, that's really cool, but I don't know what out of place looks like because I don't even know what I'm looking for. And you're going to hear me say this a lot. I've said it many times in the past. Learn to look for what normal is so that you know and can identify abnormal. So we'll kind of stay on that theme of things. If you're concerned about what things should look like, let us know in the Discord room or whatever. We can try to get you, synced up with some pictures or some links or whatever. We can see what these things are supposed to look like. But I would say, as far as from an inspection standpoint, I wouldn't really consider releasing the queen or confirming release of the queen in the packages to be an inspection. You're opening up, you're making sure she's gone, you're done. Once that queen is released and that's all going well, you're going to be on a 7 to 10 day schedule. You cannot go longer than that in the spring. It is critically important that you have a plan in place that will allow you to do an inspection every 7 to 10 days, because what happens is once the colony gets packed for space, they have no more space, whether it's real space or bee space, and that's a whole separate discussion, I guess. But if they see the space that they have available to them and they say, okay, well, we're running out of this, and then that brood pheromone begins to diminish and they think, oh my gosh, we need more brood, we're out of space, we need to swarm. When they decide they're going to create a swarm cell, it's 16 days from when that egg is laid to when you have a new queen bee emerging to take over the colony from the one that just left with the swarm. By the time that queen cell is capped at about like day 8 or so, it's almost too late. Like once they know that that queen cell is there and it's capped and ready to go, they are making a plan. Swarming is imminent. There are things you can do to stop it and disrupt it, but you're in a bind. So if you do an inspection, let's say on a Saturday, and you come back 2 Saturdays later, but they started a queen cell 3 days after you did your inspection, you've got a capped queen cell and you have 5 days until that queen's going to emerge. It's too late. So stay on your inspections every week. And again, every inspection, like I said, we'll go through a quick calendar in a second here, but do the inspections, look for the same things every week. How does the brood look? How does the queen look? Can I find the queen? Do I see eggs? How is the honey production, the nectar flow, pollen flow? Do I see all the resources coming in? Those are kind of like all the things that you got to be doing as part of that. But don't over inspect either, right? I know, I remember those first couple of years, I was so excited. Like I wanted to be in there every day. And I would say, give them at least 3 or 4 days in between. But the week is a good rule of thumb. As always, pay attention for robbing. Smaller colonies are always going to be potential victims. When there's a flow on, the bees in your area don't want to risk life and limb to go steal from another colony. But when the flow is over, you better be paying attention. So my general recommendation here across the board, just keep the entrances in that 2 to 3 inch range all the time, and even reduce it down to like an inch or so when when your nectar flow is over. Because I'm telling you, they will rob them out if you leave everything wide open. Those little colonies, especially those new packages and the things that just started out this season, they will get destroyed. Now, like we mentioned in episode 139, I want you to start getting into the habit of documenting everything, whether it's voice memos, notebooks, apps, whatever you got to use. I want you to start tracking your brood development, your inspections, your feeding, everything you're seeing, everything you're doing. Make sure you're documenting that, because that historical data is going to be really important for you for the future. Obviously, you're managing the space, like we touched on that earlier, but around that 7 to 8 out of 10 frames being used, that's probably a pretty good time to start adding on. If you're using like an 8-frame configuration, and you're using a nuke, you may want to go ahead and put 2 deeps on at the same time. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. And of course, obviously, you got to take care of you. So make sure, as always, that you're staying hydrated, you're minimizing your caffeine and alcohol before you're doing inspections in the summer, because it gets pretty stinking hot, and just kind of take care of yourself. Now, that's all the stuff that's in the background that we needed to talk about for the things going on, why they're going on, and all that. But real quick, we're going to do a week by week kind of summary. So week 1, this is getting the queen cage installed, making sure the queen becomes accepted if you're in a package of bees. Nuke is just the physical install. Your end of week 1 inspection for your nucleus colony is going to be just confirming everything still looks good. Are they drawing out comb? That's my next question, because if you look and they have 5 frames that came with the nuke and 5 frames to the sides, and they're not doing anything with those frames, that is a problem. They do not see that as expansion space. Slide everything over a little bit to the left or the right, pull one of the frames from the outside, drop it right smack in the middle, put it in the number 2, number 3 position or whatever, and that will help force them to want to build out and draw the comb and build out in that middle section, and that'll keep them on track. If you leave that alone and they're not drawing anything on those outer frames, and this applies to both nukes and package bees, but nukes specifically early on, if they are not drawing those outer frames up, they are going to make queen cells and they will swarm. So at the end of week 1, you're just making sure they're starting to use the space on the nukes. On the packages, you're making sure that you're seeing drawn comb. You've got to see drawn comb. You got to see that your queen is released, and you should absolutely see some eggs somewhere. You may have a very small patch of comb, but you should at least see some comb in there. Now, going into your week 2 inspection, what you should see now is your package of bees should have pretty much drawn out at least a full frame. I mean, they should have the whole thing drawn out. They should be putting resources on both sides. The growth after, it's kind of funny with the packages because they get no replacement. You're looking at about like 8,000 to 10,000 bees in that package, And, a bee lifespan in the summer is, right in that 35 to 48, 50 day range. So let's just call it 40 days. You get bees that were maybe, I don't know, like 5-10 days old for some of them. Some of them were older when you got them. So you have bees aging off for 3 weeks. So for those first 3 inspections, all that you're seeing is a gradual decline of your bee population in that package of bees. So you're going to see that. It's going to be a real thing. It's going to be a problem, but hang in there. Okay, so week 2, you're looking for more comb drawn. Again, full frame, hopefully, and lots of resources coming in. There should be new eggs and young larvae everywhere. And by the end of week 2, that nuke, or at least your second inspection, that nuke should have been drawing up. They should be drawing up that second comb as well. So you did your first week inspection. They maybe weren't drawing up. You moved frames around, and by your week 2 inspection, that comb should almost be completely drawn. It may very well be completely done, and they've moved to the outside. But again, keep doing that little trick of bringing outside frames to the middle. So now you're on week 3. Again, all you're going to be seeing is pretty consistently is a ton of new resources coming in. The nuke is never going to stop. The nuke is going to have this explosion in population where when you go from like week 1 to weeks 2 and 3, you're going to see a ton more bees in there. And that queen has been constantly laying the whole time. So every time a new worker emerges and becomes a new nurse bee, she's going back in and backfilling it with an egg, probably within 48 hours. So the growth is just going to be so explosive that you're going to see on that nuke. But again, week 3 with the package of bees, they are just about to a point where a lot of that capped brood, because you should see a whole lot of capped brood by now, that capped brood should be getting ready to emerge. Now, the week 4 inspection, you're coming up on around day 30, your package of bees is now starting to ramp up. Your package of bees is probably going to start to look pretty close in overall population to what your nuke did, a month earlier. But that's okay, right? The queen's laying, it depends on whose numbers you use and what kind of queen you have and how productive she is. I would say you're getting a minimum of 1,000 to 1,200 and as many as 2,000 eggs a day. Put it at 1,500 in the middle. 1,500 eggs a day. Now, during the spring, summer, when things are really busy and there's a lot of foragers out, you're probably losing 500 or 600 bees a day, but you're still plus somewhere between 800 and 1,200 a day. Again, we'll call it 1,000. So once that queen gets through, the whole colony gets through that first 21 days of the new package being established, every day after that, you're plus about 1,000. So you get to the point where another 3 weeks go by, you've got a nice, good size, small colony. They're in a medium colony, a mid-sized colony. That's great. Let them keep going and ramping up, and they'll get into that 30, 40,000 range before they start tapering into the summer. And like I said, on the nuke side of that, by week 4, that thing is ready to explode. You probably are going to have another hive body on by week 2 or 3. By week 4, you're thinking about honey supers, and they're just cranking along. I don't know if this was enough detail or if I answered the things that you all were looking for or hoping to get out of this. It's kind of a lot of stuff just off the top of my head. I'm sure I probably missed something, but feel free to, again, drop me an email, jump in the Discord room, let us know what we can do to supplement this if there's other questions you have that we didn't cover. But the final kind of like wrapping up takeaway things I want you to kind of focus on here is the packages are going to be more challenging. They're going to be a little more work. They're going to be a month probably behind the nukes, but a lot of times you can get them a month earlier. So a little bit of a trade-off there. But it's not just about getting the bees into the box. It's getting them set up for success. So I think it's critical in those first early weeks. I would say this about feeding. Let's just go one more thing with the feeding. You have people on both sides of it. I'm a general anti-feeder. I feed my bees for a few select situations, and that's it. Now, what ends up happening is a lot of people you see who are professional beekeepers or sideliners, they're feeding a lot because they are trying to grow and expand, and they're moving things around, and they're doing, queen rearing and lots of other activities. But you don't have to. As a hobbyist beekeeper in an area that it will natively support pollinators like honeybees, you shouldn't have to feed. The vast majority of my bees are not being fed. They are living and surviving off of the environment. But the rule I would tell anybody, everybody, wherever you are, when in doubt, give them some food. If they take it up and they consume it, then they probably need it for one reason or another. Let them have it. If they don't, then they probably don't want it. Package bees, absolutely. Nucs, probably not. But you know what? If you have a nuke and they need it, give it to them. All right, everybody. Well, that's going to be about it for this episode here. Join us in the Discord room. Check out the YouTube channel. Let us know if we can help you out anyway. And with that, have a great weekend. Take care. Be kind to one another. And remember that I love you. And there's nothing you can do about it. We'll talk to you soon.